All right, let's get into it today. We're exploring something pretty unnerving.
Yeah, it's eerie disappearances in U.S. national parks.
It's crazy, right? You see these beautiful landscapes and think nothing could go wrong.
Right. But people actually go missing more often than you think.
That some of these cases share some really strange similarities.
Yeah, and that's what has led some people to think there's more to it than just accidents.
So let's talk about this missing 411 phenomenon.
Sure.
Before we dive into specific cases, can you explain what this missing 411 profile is?
Well, missing a 411 profile isn't really an official term. It's more a collection of recurring themes in these disappearances.
Okay, so it's not like every missing person case fits this profile.
Exactly, right. It's only certain cases, but the ones that do are really perplexing.
So what are some of the key elements of this profile? What makes investigators suspicious?
One of the most common things is the location where these disappearances happen.
Okay.
Victims often vanish near water or boulder fields or even near berry patches.
Interesting. It's almost like those specific locations are important or dangerous somehow.
And then there's the victims themselves. There's some weird similarities there too.
Like what?
Often the victims are either super intelligent like scientists or doctors, or they have intellectual disabilities.
Wow, that's strange. I can't imagine what those two groups would have in common.
Yeah, it's really odd. And another strange thing is the search and rescue dogs.
What about them?
In a lot of missing 411 cases, the dogs have trouble finding a scent.
Huh.
Or they start acting really weird during the search.
That's not normal for trained dogs, right?
No, not at all, which is why it makes people think there's something else going on.
It's almost like the scent just disappears or the dog sense something that scares them.
Right, and then there's the clothing.
What at it?
Victims are sometimes found partially dressed or even naked, and no one knows why.
That's creepy. Is there any reason for that, or is it just another mystery?
Well, there's a thing called paradoxical undressing that can happen when someone's really cold.
Paradoxical undressing. What's that?
It's when your body starts to shut down from the cold and your blood vessels dilate.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you feel warm even though you're freezing.
Wow. So people might take their clothes off because they think they're hot even though they're freezing to death.
Yeah, exactly.
That's scary. So that could explain some cases, but not all of them, right?
Right. Like when victims are found in places that seem impossible to get to.
Yeah. Or in areas that were already searched.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really strange. We're talking about people being found miles off the trail in really dangerous areas.
Okay, so we have these strange locations, unusual victims, and confusing circumstances.
Right. To really understand how weird this is, we need to look at some specific cases.
Yeah, I agree. Let's look at some examples.
Okay, our first case is in Colorado where an experienced hiker just vanished.
Okay.
This is the story of James McGrogan, and it will make you wonder if you're really safe in national parks.
Wow. Okay, so let's hear it.
This case is a perfect example of how strange these missing 411 cases can be. This was a guy who knew the wilderness.
Right.
He was well prepared, and he disappeared on a trail he knew well. It's a case that still bothers people today.
So tell me about James McGrogan. Who was he and how did he disappear?
James McGrogan was a doctor, and he loved being outdoors. He knew the Colorado wilderness really well.
Okay.
He was last seen hiking alone in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, a place he'd hiked many times before.
So this wasn't someone going into unfamiliar territory.
Exactly. And that's what makes his disappearance so strange. He was on a marked trail with a GPS, a cell phone, and plenty of supplies.
Wow.
It was supposed to be a normal hike, but he never came back.
And then what happened? Did they send out a search party?
Oh yeah, of course. They had helicopters, expert trackers, and tons of volunteers looking for him.
They must have found something.
But they didn't. Nothing for weeks. It was like he just vanished.
That's scary. With all those people in technology, you'd think they would have found at least a clue.
You would think, right? But there was nothing. There were a few things that were strange, though.
What do you mean?
Well, the search dogs had trouble picking up his scent, which is really unusual for trained dogs, especially on a marked trail.
Yeah, that's weird. It's like his smell just disappeared.
Right. And then there is the terrain where he went missing.
What about it?
It wasn't super dangerous, but there were lots of boulder fields and thick undergrowth.
Okay, so maybe he fell or got hurt somewhere and they just couldn't find him?
That's what they thought at first. But as weeks turned into months, they started to worry.
Yeah, I bet. It's like the wilderness just swallowed him up.
And then just when they were losing hope, some hikers found something.
This is where it gets really creepy, huh?
It does. Weeks after he vanished, they found McGrogan's body at the bottom of an ice fall,
What?
miles off the trail in an area they had already searched.
Miles off the trail. At the bottom of an icefall, how is that even possible? He was an experienced hiker. He had a GPS. He knew
Yeah.
the area.
It's crazy, right? And it gets even stranger when you see how they found his body.
Okay, now we're getting chills. What do you mean?
Well, he wasn't wearing all of his clothes. His coat, gloves, and boots were missing, but his coat was neatly packed in his backpack.
That's so strange.
His GPS and cell phone were there too, but the batteries were dead.
It's like someone took his clothes off and put his stuff in specific places. It makes no sense.
And then there were his injuries. He had a broken leg and head injuries, but his helmet was still on.
Okay, this is too weird.
Yeah.
How could he end up miles away with those injuries, without his clothes and with his things scattered around?
Those are the questions that have bothered investigators for years.
Yeah, how did he get so far off the trail? Why wasn't he wearing his clothes? How did he get hurt?
And how did he end up at the bottom of that icefall? And why couldn't the dogs find him?
It's like a puzzle where the pieces don't fit. It's almost like he was taken to that spot injured, and then someone took his stuff.
Right. It doesn't make any sense.
It really doesn't tie in. Stay with us as we explore more of these missing 411 cases and try to figure out what's going on. That McGrogan story is just wild. It's like a mystery with no answers.
Exactly. And McGrogan's case isn't unique. There are lots of missing 411 cases with similar details.
So it's not just a coincidence. It's like there's a pattern here.
Right. And each case adds another piece to this really confusing puzzle.
Okay, so let's look at another case that fits this missing 411 profile.
Okay, this one takes us to the Canadian Yukon. The disappearance of Bart Schleier will make you rethink everything you know about surviving in the wild.
Okay, I'm ready.
Schleier's case is especially interesting because he was super skilled and experienced. He spent his whole life understanding nature.
Yeah, I read about him. This wasn't just some random hiker. Schleier was like a wilderness expert.
Totally. Bart Schleier was a wildlife biologist, a hunter, and he had worked in some of the most remote places on Earth.
Wow, he worked on grizzly bear projects in Yellowstone and even tiger conservation in Siberia.
Exactly. This guy knew how to handle himself in the wild.
And yet he disappeared during a hunting trip in the Yukon.
Yeah, he was dropped off by a plane for a 2-week trip.
And when the plane came back,
He was gone. No sign of him.
that's already scary. But knowing how experienced he was makes it even weirder.
Definitely. And it gets even stranger when you hear what they found at his campsite.
Okay, did they find anything that could explain what happened?
They found some things, but it only made things more confusing.
Like what?
His tent was knocked down and some of his stuff was scattered around,
Okay,
but his food was untouched.
wait, what? Untouched? Wouldn't a bear or a wolf have gone for the food first?
You would think, right? And that's what confused everyone. The food being untouched means it probably wasn't an animal attack.
Huh. What else did they find?
Well, they found his boat tied up a half-mile from camp.
It's like he left it there on purpose.
Exactly. Like he was getting ready for something or running from something.
Yeah, but what? Did they find any other clues?
As they searched, they found more of his stuff spread out over a large area.
So he was moving around.
Seems like it. They found his bow and arrows in one place, his backpack in another, and his bear spray radio and knife all in separate spots.
It's like he was dropping things as he went.
Right, but there was no pattern to it. It didn't make sense why he would leave his things like that, especially someone who knew how to survive in the wilderness.
Yeah, it's like he was lost or panicking, but that doesn't seem like him.
And unfortunately, they did eventually find him.
Oh no. What happened?
They found his body far away from his belongings, and how he died is just as mysterious as how he disappeared.
Okay, tell me everything. What was so strange about his death?
Well, there were no signs of a fight or any injuries from defending himself.
So he wasn't attacked.
It doesn't look like it, and they're sure it wasn't an animal attack either.
But what happened then?
That's the mystery. There was no obvious cause of death. And to make things even weirder, a lot of his clothes were missing.
Hold on, no fight, no animal attack, and missing clothes. This guy knew the wilderness like the back of his hand. It just doesn't add up.
I know it's completely baffling. The lack of evidence is typical in missing 411 cases.
The missing clothes, the scattered belongings, the untouched food, it's like something impossible happened.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense.
So what are we supposed to think? What
They
could
could get
explain
them.
this?
That's the big question, isn't it? And there are lots of theories. But before we get into the really weird ones, let's look at one more case.
Okay, what's this last case about?
This one is a little different. It involves technology and communication, and it makes the disappearance even more confusing.
Okay, I'm listening.
This is the story of Mike Peterson, and it shows that even in today's world, these strange disappearances can still happen.
This is crazy. It seems Even with all our technology, nature can still surprise us.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we don't understand everything about the wild.
All right, so let's get into Mike Peterson's disappearance.
Huh?
Who was he and what happened?
Mike Peterson was an experienced outdoorsman. He loved hiking and exploring the wilderness.
Okay, so he was comfortable in the outdoors and knew the area he was hiking in.
Exactly. And he decided to go on a solo hike, which wasn't unusual for him.
Okay, but you said this case had a modern twist. What was different about this one?
Well, Peterson was texting his girlfriend the whole time he was hiking.
Wow, so he wasn't out of contact or anything.
Nope. He was sending her updates on his location, sharing pictures, and even making plans to meet up later.
So everything seemed normal?
Yeah, his girlfriend knew the area too. They had hiked there together before, so they agreed on a place and time to meet up.
It sounds like a normal day for a couple who likes to hike. What happened then?
Well, Peterson's texts were happy and normal for most of the hike.
Okay.
He said he was enjoying the view, the weather was nice, and he was looking forward to seeing her.
So nothing seemed wrong at all.
Not at first, but then his texts became less frequent, and his replies were really short, like he was getting distracted by something.
Okay, that's a little creepy. Did he say anything about what was distracting him?
No, unfortunately not. His last few texts were just quick replies and then nothing.
So his girlfriend got worried and went to meet him.
Right. She went to their meeting spot and waited, but he never showed up.
Oh.
And then to make things even scarier, she heard gunshots in the woods.
That's terrifying.
No.
Did they ever figure out if the gunshots were connected to Peterson's disappearance?
Nope. It's still a mystery.
Wow, so they searched for him.
Oh yeah, a huge search. Dogs, helicopters, everything. But he was missing for days.
And they eventually found him.
Yes, in a creek. But how he died is just as confusing as everything else.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here.
Uh-huh.
Tell me what happened.
Well, they found some of his stuff spread out.
Like what?
His vest and bear spray in one spot, his backpack and gun in another.
It's like he was taking things off as he went. Just like Schleier in the Yukon.
Exactly. It's the
Yeah.
same pattern. And just like Schleier's case, people thought maybe it was a bear. But there was no evidence. No bear tracks or signs of an attack.
So what happened to him? Did he fall in the creek?
Some people think he drowned because the water level was high.
But what about his stuff being scattered around?
I know. It's like he was dropping things as he went. It's really strange.
So we have no idea what really happened to him.
Peterson's case, just like all the others we've talked about, has no easy answers.
It's like these stories are saying that even in places we think are safe, nature can still be dangerous and unpredictable.
That's a good way to put it. We just don't know everything about the world around us.
Wow, we've covered some really strange cases today. Each one is like a puzzle with missing pieces.
Exactly. But even though we don't have all the answers, there are definitely some patterns in these disappearances.
Like the water, the search dogs, the missing clothes, and the strange locations where the victims are found.
Right, and those patterns make you wonder if there's something else going on.
Yeah, something we don't understand. Maybe it's some natural phenomenon or something completely unknown.
It's definitely a mystery, and it's one that keeps people fascinated and searching for answers.
Well, this has been a fascinating and honestly kind of scary deep dive into the missing 411 phenomenon.
Yeah, it's a reminder to be careful and prepared when you're out in the wilderness.
Absolutely. Thanks to everyone for listening today and exploring this mystery with us.
If you want to learn more about these cases and the different theories, check out the links in the description.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into strange and unexplained events.
And let us know in the comments what you think about the missing 411 phenomenon. Do you have any theories of your own?
And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, the wilderness is full of wonders, but also mysteries that might never be solved.